My name is Stuart Murray Williams. I am one of the founders of the UK Anabaptist Mennonite Network. I am also the director of the Centre for Anabaptist Studies, which is based at Bristol Baptist College. Together with the Quakers and the Church of the Brethren, the Anabaptist tradition comprises the so-called historic Peace Church tradition, a tradition that has sought to follow the teaching of Jesus in relation to the loving of enemies and being peacemakers. A tradition that for some hundreds of years has been exploring alternatives to violence and pursuing the ways of peace and reconciliation. And the network exists as a place of connection for people who are drawn to this tradition and inspired by it, and as a place where resources can be found to explore these things further. But the story of the church over the last 2,000 years actually contains other examples of movements that espouse peace, at least in their earliest years. The classic example, of course, is the early church, which for the first 2 or 3 centuries was resolutely opposed to participating in violence. They perceived themselves to be a community of peace, and in all kinds of ways discouraged their members from participating in war and other forms of violence. Sadly, when the early church made peace with empire, things changed, and authorization of violence became the norm. But then moving through the history of the church, we find many other new movements, emerging traditions, which seem to have taken seriously the gospel teachings and espoused a peace witness. We think perhaps of the Franciscans, of the Waldensians, of the Lollards, of at least one branch of the Hussite movement, of the Churches of Christ, of the Assemblies of God, and others, who in their first generation rediscovered the teaching of Jesus in the Gospels and took it seriously, and saw that as implying a commitment to non-violence. Sadly, again, as the denominations aged, as they became larger and more respectable, most of them lost that peace tradition and moved away from it. There have been attempts over the years in some of these traditions to recover that peace witness, but that has very often not achieved a great deal of traction. And of course, there are, in pretty much all traditions, in all denominations, peace groups struggling, often on the margins, to persuade their brothers and sisters that peace should be at the heart of the gospel, that peace should be part of the tradition to which they belong. So I am delighted to welcome this new network, a network which is intended to draw together people from many different traditions, to hear many different voices, and to explore together the possibility of peace and reconciliation and non-violence being at the heart of the gospel that we proclaim. I see this as an opportunity to listen to one another and to return again to the sources, to look again at the teaching of Jesus in the New Testament, and to explore what it might mean to be a people of peace in our generation.